This is episode number 42, Road Noise, Permission to Rest. Hello and welcome again to another episode of Road Noise Life 1 Mile at a Time. I'm your host, Michael Blackston, and this is my Life Journal podcast where you're traveling alongside me in the passenger seat as I commute to and from places all over the Southeast. Now, while I am commuting this morning, I'm not commuting for work. I'm headed to Anderson, South Carolina. By my dash, it's 6:59. So right at 7 o'clock a.m., and I have an appointment at the skin specialist to have what's called the Mohs procedure done on one of the places on my back. It's actually on my left shoulder on the back. And what they do is they go in and they cut a big chunk of it out, as much as they think they need to cut out. And this one goes pretty deep. So what they do is they look at it once they've cut it out, and they'll do a biopsy and see if they got it all. And they'll do it right there. And I'll just have to wait. And if they got it all, they'll patch me up, send me home. If they didn't, they'll continue cutting, and they'll biopsy that, and they'll find out again if they got it all. And if not, they'll cut on me again. So this could be something that doesn't take very long, or it could be something that could take all day. So I'm in for a day at the doctor's office. Hopefully it won't take too awful long, but I do need to get this podcast episode recorded, and I really have not had a whole lot of opportunity to think about road noise this week because it's been so crazy. And I'm going to tell you about my week a little bit later on, but it's kind of all going to be intertwined because this episode is one in the Permissions series. It's called Permission to Rest. And when I did the first episode in the Permissions series, I can't even remember what it was. It was permission to do something. I can't even remember what the first one was, but it gave me the idea to do several in a Permissions series. Permission to rest, permission to forgive, permission to tell. And some of these are going to be very deep issues. And I thought that I was going to do the rest of them all at one time, back to back to back. And I don't know that I necessarily want to do that now, because if I do, it'll be very, it might get to be a little too much all at one time, just back to back. So I think I'm going to kind of spread them out throughout the weeks. And this one is Permission to Rest because this week has been so tiresome for me. And I need to rest, and I'm not the type of person who does that very often. I don't like to rest. I like to go. I like to keep things going. I like to always be moving, even when I'm sick. Even if I call in and tell one of the people that I'm going to work for that I can't make it because I'm sick, my wife will have to stay on me because I won't rest. I'll get up, I'll clean the house, I'll do something that needs to be done around the house, even though I'm sick and need to be laying in bed. So I'm preaching to the choir in this when I say you need to give yourself, possibly, if you're that type of person, permission to rest. I'm going to have to take my sunglasses out of the visor here. I got a little compartment in the Hyundai that is perfect for holding glasses just above the rearview mirror here, and I had to get it out because the sun is directly in my eyes. So permission to rest. Do you need to give yourself permission? Sometimes I find that if I'm falling short in an area, it's my fault. It's nobody else's fault. I say sometimes, to be honest, it's most of the time. If I'm falling short in an area, I can blame nobody but myself, and a lot of times that has to do with a lot of factors. And one of them is usually because I am not energized enough to handle the task at hand. I've gone too much. I have not rested. And also a lot of times, I won't give myself permission to do something like rest. So that's what this episode is all about. Giving yourself the permission to take a little time off from whatever it is you're doing. And so I guess this episode, who knows how long this one's going to be, because I've got less than an hour to get where I'm getting, and everything's going to be tied in together. How my week has gone, all of that ties into the fact that I am so tired that I need to give myself this permission. I found out last week that we're going to be moving again. We didn't want to move the last time we moved, about 2 years ago, and the lady who was renting the house to us that we were living in decided she wanted to sell it. We couldn't buy it, and although we did want to, we didn't have a way to, and so we had to move because she was going to start showing the house to people, and we didn't want to have people constantly coming in and out of our house, and so we decided to go ahead and just let her sell it, and we would rent somewhere else. And when this all went down, a house just a few houses down from us became available. This house has been okay. It's a very old house and it needs a lot of repairs. It has a lot of stuff that is wrong with it, and while the landlord is a really good guy and he's good about taking care of things when you ask him to, he's not a bad landlord at all. He does a really good job, and I enjoyed having him as a landlord. The fact is, there's just so much that was going wrong with this house that if I called him all the time on everything, he'd be constantly over there. So I decided to let some things go. Not that would hurt the house, but just that I wasn't going to worry about right then. You know, I just live with it. It wasn't anything immediate that needed to be done anyway, but it was just annoying, and my wife and I decided we would live with it. Another thing is that now that we have our daughter, she needs a bedroom of her own. We've had her since we moved in, but she's 3 now, and she's getting to the point where she's a little more independent. She needs her own space. My son is almost 12. He definitely needs his own space, and they were having to share a room, so we needed 3 bedrooms. All of this to say that another house came available right across the street, and this house had 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and is bigger than the one we're living in now. It just, on top of that, has a full basement in the bottom to store things. I mean, it's not somewhere where you want to spend a lot of time. It's not a room, but there are stairs that go down, and you can actually stand up in there with a concrete floor, and there's plenty of storage down there, which is another area that we were vastly in need of. Okay, so this came available, and we decided, or my wife decided on, I think it was the last trip that I took. I think it was last week. Yeah, she sent me pictures. She decided to go look at it. Well, it turns out that the man who owns that house loves my wife and I from the theater. So he knows our work. He knows us better than we know him because he's come to see all of our stuff at the theater, and he was very excited to have us in there possibly. So I went and looked at it Saturday, and we went ahead and paid him what we needed to pay him for down payment, signed a lease and everything. All just boom, 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 just like that. And all of a sudden, we're moving again. And although we're going to pay 1 more month's rent to the landlord, because I'm not just going to move out and say done. You know, I'm not going to do him that way. We're going to give him a month's notice. On the 1st, we're going to pay him 1 month rent more. That will give me plenty of time to get some stuff done as far as going through it when we're done moving and cleaning. You know, a lot of people will just take their stuff and go. I like to, if I'm moving from somewhere, I like to do a deep clean after I leave to kind of help out the people coming in next, because there's usually stuff they have to do to meet up to code every time they rent somebody. I know sometimes they need to, I think it's in Georgia, maybe it's in South Carolina. I don't know what it is, but sometimes they have to put a fresh coat of paint on by law. I'm not sure if that's the case. I guess it's not, because they didn't do that in the place we're living. But anyway, you get the point. I'm going to give him a month's notice. I've got plenty of time to move out. And that's where I'm going with this. Because yesterday, the new landlord called me and told me the past tenant was already out. And if we wanted to go ahead and start moving, we could go ahead and do it. We already had a key. He said, you can go ahead and start anytime you want. Well, that was great news for me, because I had already begun packing. I had gone to a local retail establishment, and they found that they had a bunch of these perfect size boxes with handles on the sides. Perfect size, just big enough to carry without being too heavy and small enough to not be too cumbersome. So I started packing. I got a bunch of those boxes and I started packing, and because I had a cancellation this week, I had all this week to pack. Now this is Thursday, so I've had Monday through yesterday to start packing. I wasn't expecting to get to move in until the 1st. He called yesterday, said go ahead and start if you want. So my needing to rest butt started going and saying I'm going to start moving everything over while my wife was at work. And it's a good thing that I did. However, I just nearly killed myself yesterday. Now, I'm saying that to be an exaggeration. I didn't really almost kill myself, but it felt that way by the end of the day. And it did get serious. My wife made me stop and eat because I had stayed hydrated, but I hadn't eaten anything hardly at all. And while I'm trying to lose weight, going that rigorous, you really need to stay fed. You need to stay energized. You need to keep gas in the tank, not just oil, but gas. I stayed lubricated. I kept water on me all day long between the two places, but I wasn't eating, and I started getting dizzy, and I nearly passed out 2 or 3 times. Keep in mind also, this is the end of July in the Deep South. It was 100 degrees yesterday, going back and forth between these places. I changed clothes twice because I was wringing with sweat. I chose to talk about giving yourself permission to rest today, partly because some of the other topics that I have for this podcast are a little deeper and require a little more preparation, writing things down. This episode won't have really hardly any show notes in it at all, other than just a paragraph or two, because it's just one thing. There's not a list of bullet points. There's not a bunch of links to give you to resources to help you with this. It's not anything you can, or it's not anything I can do to help you other than tell you this. You've got to give yourself permission to rest. You may need to schedule times to rest. You may need to say at the end of the day, 5 o'clock, I'm done. I've got to spend time with my family. I've got to spend time with myself. I've got to recharge. Because if you go and you don't stop, you're going to wear out. Just like your car. If you ran your car constantly 24 hours a day, or even 14 hours a day. Let's go with that, 14 to 16 hours a day. That's probably best, because most of us get anywhere from 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And I'm the type of person that when I'm not sleeping, I'm going nonstop that whole time. So that's 16, 17 hours a day that I don't stop unless I give myself permission to. If you ran your car 17 hours a day without stopping, especially without stopping for gas, it would not last all day. And it might last several days, and it might last a while, but eventually it's going to burn out. It's what happens. That's what we are. Humans are machines made of flesh, and we have to recharge. We have to settle down. We have to be able to let our body cool off. If only to go again the next day, we've got to give ourselves some time to cool off and to rest. And so this episode is simply this advice. Give yourself permission to rest. It's okay. I have such a hard time with this because I've got so much going on. I run a business. I'm currently in the middle of yet another move. I'm happy about it. It's a much better situation for us. And I'm hoping this is where we'll be until we either buy a home in Elberton or move to Myrtle Beach, whichever we decide to do. Right now, we're thinking it's going to be Myrtle Beach, and that's what we're planning on. I hope I'm going to stay here till the end, but I'm in the middle of this move. I'm running a business. I'm trying to start a side business that will eventually take over the business I'm doing now and become my first-hand business so that I don't have to travel and be away from my family as much. I'm working on that, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit because that all ties into all of this as well. Some decisions I've made there. And also some decisions about this podcast I've made that you'll need to be, no, it's not going away, but it's something that you'll, if you're a listener and look forward to it, something you'll need to be privy to. I've got this podcast. Right now, I try to do it every week. I've got a mother right now who is injured. She's got a cancer issue she's having to have seen about, that she may be about to have surgery. Well, she is about to have surgery for, and then she just broke a rib. I've got a 12-year-old son, a 3-year-old daughter, a wife who needs my attention. I've got a book that is halfway finished, and 1,800,252 projects aside from that I am desperately wanting to get started on. That's how my mind works. And every day there's another project that I think of that I want to get started on. When you have a mind that works like that, and I'm not the only one, there are a bunch of people like that. America's on the go constantly. This whole world is on the go constantly. When that happens, you tend to burn out. You tend to say, I got to do this, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and the sun can't go down until I'm done. Or even if the sun does go down, I'm still going to be working at it. At least that's the way I am. If you don't rest, you'll burn out. So, I've made this decision. I'm going to give myself permission to rest. Even when it feels like it's going to kill me. Even when my mind won't stop. I'm going to give myself permission every day to take a lunch. I'm bad to work through lunch. I'm going to give myself permission and allow myself the time to say I'm going to take at least an hour every day for lunch. I'm going to sit down and enjoy my meal with my family every evening, and I'm going to not keep going in the evening when it's time to rest. I'm going to say there's been enough. I'm going to set a time. I'm really not sure exactly, it's going to be different every evening, but I've got to rest, and I'm giving myself permission to. I have to give myself that permission, because if I don't actively say that to myself, I'll feel guilty. I'll feel like I'm abandoning or betraying things that I need to do. I'll feel like I'm somehow betraying my family and not doing my responsibilities because I'm not working on a layout at 10 o'clock at night for a customer. Because that's what I do. I mean, that's how I provide for my family. And while those things need to be done, there are times and places for those things. And I can go all I want, but it's going to do my family no good if I burn out and am ineffective not only for the business, but also for them because I burned out. And I'm finally starting to realize that, because the older I get, the less my body is able to handle everything. I have to give it rest. I have to allow myself to refuel, to tune up, to recharge. So if that's you, if you're saying that sounds just like me, Michael, I'm the same way. I want you to take a minute, think about it, and ask yourself, do I need to give myself permission to rest? It seems like such a small, insignificant thing, but it could make all of the difference in the world to you. Give yourself permission to rest. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because there's really no more I can say. I don't have a bunch of bullet points. Like I said, I really don't have a lot to give you in the way of that, other than just keep beating that dead horse. Give yourself permission to rest. And I'm giving you permission to give yourself permission to rest. Now, what was I talking about earlier about all the projects that I've got going on and streamlining and things that I've thought about, and including this podcast? Well, I said a ridiculous number of projects, which obviously I was exaggerating about. I don't have that many projects, but I do have a bunch of projects so that it feels like it's in the millions. It just feels like I'm overwhelmed. And I also mentioned that I'm desiring to change the direction of my life when it comes to how I work, what I do for a living. I love what I do. I love to etch, and I will probably always etch until my hand falls off or quits working. However, I am now weary of being away from my family. I like to travel, and I hope to still do a little of that through speaking engagements and things like that. But this being gone 3 and 4 days a week is, now that my children are certain ages, it's hard on my wife, it's hard on me to be away from them, and I will do it as long as I feel like this is the direction the Lord wants me to lead. But I am feeling the calling to do something different. And so I am now, and have been for a while, trying to find different venues to get me home so that I would stop traveling so much. My dream is that the job I'm doing now, I want to be overtaken as the main job by the side job, so that I can eventually phase out the etching, and the side jobs will take over. And I'm keeping the side jobs things that I do from home. My dream is to eventually work from home. And I've had a whole bunch of different projects. For instance, the novels that I want to write. One of them I'm almost done writing. And that's fine. I will always write. But up until now, it's been something I would consider actively trying to become one of the side streams of income. My thought was that I would do a lot of writing, and I would sell, I'd get enough of a catalog of my writing that I would sell ebooks and all sorts of things like that. And while that is still something I want to do as a hobby, and if they take off, if when Mr. Long Says Nothing takes off and somebody, I'm going to send it to publishers first, and when I send it there, if I get 20 rejection letters and then number 21 says, "Here, Mr. Blackston, we'd love to do this," and it becomes a bestseller and I sell movie rights and all that other stuff, that's a pipe dream, I understand. It's not likely, but it's something I will, always try for. I'll always try to get published, and who knows what'll happen. My point is, if that were to happen, okay, fine, I would love to write for a living. But the odds are that's not going to make me a living. I have another podcast I've been thinking about doing that I am going to get a little more serious about now, but it's called the Everything Arts Podcast, and I'll be interviewing and talking to people about art. There's another one called The Artist Brainstorm that I'm thinking about doing that's more entrepreneurial. And those are things that if I get home more, I may have an opportunity to do, but who knows? At first, I thought I might try to monetize those and put those as the side business. It's not going to happen really that way, and here's why. As I was reading my Bible the other day, I felt like God was speaking to me, saying, you need to choose one thing and focus on one thing and let all this other stuff go. You can still have hobbies. You can still have your hands in a lot of different, your irons in a lot of different fires, or your fingers in a lot of different pies, however you want to say it. You can still do that, but on a hobby basis. You don't need to worry about them being a focal point of your financial growth. You need to find one thing, one business that is viable, that is historical. In other words, it's not a fad. It's not something that's fly by night. Something that has been viable for a while. I should add those two together. Historically viable. Something you love, and something that can be fairly passive in the sales portion of it so that you can spend your time creating. It hit me that art was that. Kind of what I'm doing now, but what I'm doing now, I can't sell granite. I mean, I don't want to get into granite sales. I don't want to sell monuments. But I love to draw and I love to paint and I love to create art, and people like to purchase what I do. You can sell the originals for a good clip, and then you can reserve the right to sell prints and that imagery on all sorts of things. And it hit me that there are all sorts of ways to do this, both retail and online, where if I focus on it, I can actually make a profit and start seeing that growth in that business very easily, very quickly. And it's something I could do past retirement, something I could do and not even have to retire from, because the more images I make, the more art I create over the next 20, 30 years. By the time it's time to retire, that's that many years of consistent imagery, everything up for sale. So it compounds on itself. The more I do, the more I have to sell. The more I have to sell, the more likely I am to sell it. And I love art. Every white canvas is a new opportunity. It's a new opportunity for me to create something beautiful and magical for somebody. So right now I'm in the middle of deciding kind of what my focal point as far as my thing will be. I don't want to draw. With art, you can get into all sorts of muddiness. You can draw or paint a dog or a cat one day and a fantasy scene the next day and a beautiful artesian landscape the next day. You don't really want to do that. I understand enough about art to know that you need a thing, maybe 2 or 3 things, but you need a focus. You need to pinpoint that into a focus of topic, I guess. I really need to have, I would say, 1 to 3, and no more than 3 topics of focus when it comes to the imagery that I create. And so that's where I am now, and I've decided to focus on that and give that my all. I'm still going to get Mr. Long written, and I'm going to go ahead and try to get it written as quickly as I can because I'm so close to finished with it. I'm halfway done with the first draft, and I want to see that is my baby. That's not just a hobby. Mr. Long is a part of me. So I'm going to get that book finished and out there, and I'm going to sell my comedy blog stuff as an ebook. But I think I may be getting rid of the comedy blog altogether after that because it's a hobby. I had thought about doing something like that and trying to make money, but you have to spend a lot of time if you want to be a money-making blogger. You have to spend all of your time focused on the blog. And while I do like to write, it's not likely I'm going to make a living doing that. I need to focus on something that I can make a living doing and spend my time with that, and the rest needs to be hobby. So I may let the blog go, and I may just write comedy pieces every now and then as they come that I keep to myself and then release them as an ebook later, as they come. Basically what I'm telling myself is I'm giving myself permission to rest without having all of these obligations. When I have a weekly obligation constantly for a podcast and a blog and writing 1,000 words a day on my novel, it gets overwhelming. So I'm giving myself permission to rest, permission to cut back, and I'm going to focus on building my business. What does that mean for the Road Noise podcast? All it means is that you may get an episode every week, you may not. I'm going to try my best, especially while I'm traveling, and I expect to be traveling for a while before my art business takes over. But there may be times where I give myself permission not to do a podcast episode. This one, for instance, a very large reason that I'm doing this episode today, and I'm recording this right now, is because it's Thursday and I need to get one out on Friday. And it is a topic that I wanted to talk about, and it is apropos for what's been going on with me this week. So it kind of fit. And I wanted to go ahead and tell you, you may not have an episode every week. That doesn't mean you're only going to get one every now and again. You're going to get one just about every week. But I'm just saying that there may be times that I give myself permission not to do an episode, or if I run out of time, I don't worry about it. You may get 3 out of a month. Then the next month you may get 4. Then the next month you may get 2. Then the next month you may get 4. I'm going to try to keep it consistent. I'm just not going to feel guilty if I don't. Because I do have the Everything Arts podcast that I'm going to do as part of my business, that will be part of the marketing to get my name out and things like that for my business, and it'll be talking about art and stuff like that. And that will be important as well. And as that is released, I will let you know about it. It's in the works right now. I've decided to rev that engine back up, and all of the stuff will be getting started as soon as I get in this house, which will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks when I'm settled. So I hope you got something out of this episode. If you got nothing else, I'm giving you permission to give yourself rest. Maybe you should take a look and see if you're overwhelming yourself, and if so, decide what's important. And the other things, there's nothing wrong with doing them. Just don't feel so guilty if you don't have the time to do it this week or next week. Give yourself permission to take a break. This week's positive review is for an application that I found, and it's funny that I'm going to give this as a positive review because it's actually adding work to my schedule after all that I just told you. But it is and it's not, I don't think. We'll see how it goes. My cousin told me this past Sunday about an app called ROADIE, RODIE, and I loaded it up on my phone because he knows that I travel all over the Southeast, and he thought it might be an extra way to make some money. So he told me about it, and as I looked at it, I thought it was really neat. And I think it's going to be something that will be helpful. We'll just have to see. But it's called ROADIE, ROADIE. What it is if you travel or if you commute any length of miles, it's kind of Uber for deliveries. It's kind of on that same idea. You give them your information. There is a lot of personal information you have to give them because they have to know. Basically, it's a delivery service. It's a custom delivery service. It's not using UPS. It's not using mail. And I am sure that the U.S. mail is going to hate this, because if it gets big, they're already struggling. But it allows people like you and me, if you're a driver who goes multiple places, to have an opportunity to make a little money on the side. So, for instance, you get the app, you sign up for it, and you get alerts. And you can put in where you tend to go and where you would like to go. And if you get a delivery in that area, it will alert you. You can send via the app as well, but I'm going to be using it as a delivery tool to make a little extra money. So let me give you an example. I got an alert the other day that told me there was going to be a delivery that needed to happen between where I live and Cookeville, Tennessee, because I set that up as points A and point B of my destinations, and there's a delivery along that route. And basically it says this. It gave me the alert. I opened it up, and it said such and such person needs this item delivered by such and such time in such and such place, and it's along your route. They're willing to pay $75 for it. Well, I didn't have anything going up into Cookeville at the time, so I didn't bid on it. So, because I think I don't even know if you bid on it. I don't necessarily know if it goes like that. I don't think it's like that. I think if you contact the person and say, yeah, I'll bring it to you by a certain time, as agreed, you get the job. I think you'll have to look at it yourself. But it just looks like it's going to be a neat way to make a little extra money by being a delivery person if you're going from point A to point B. Now, you do have to keep in mind that you'll have to go get it, and you'll have to take it, to where you're going. You're going to have to allot that time and be able to do that, which me, making my own hours, I could do that. And so as long as I wasn't going to be going, 30 minutes out of my way to get it and then 30 minutes out of my way to pick it up, then it'd be worth it for me. So you have to take all of that into consideration. And I think it's fairly new, so it will probably only grow. But especially in larger areas like Atlanta, Chicago, New York, places like that, just looking on the map, there were a lot of opportunities to do stuff. So if you're in a bigger area, you may be able to just pick up some money on any certain day. Say you have a day off and you wanted to pick up some extra money, you could go make deliveries if you live in a big area by doing stuff like that. So check it out. I'm really new to it myself. There's a lot of features on it, I'm sure, that I don't know about. I may be wrong about some stuff, but I'm going to give it a positive review because I think it's a great idea. So, ROADIE, it's the app. It's RODIE. Give it a shot. See if it's something you might use to make a little extra money or to send something that you don't want to send via the post office or UPS or something like that. So that's my positive review for this week. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give me a call on the voicemail line at 706-408-7456. I also have email at feedback@michaelblackston.com. You can get in touch with me via the webpage, roadnoisepodcast.com. I really covet your ratings and reviews on iTunes if you're there. And the best way to have you spread the word about the Road Noise Podcast is to do it by mouth or by social media, any of that stuff. There's social media buttons on the webpage, or copy the link and send it. Usually your podcast player has, whichever one you're using, usually has a little thing up there where you can share it on Facebook and your social media. So I ask you to do that, please, for me. Just take a minute and do that to help me grow this podcast, because the more I grow, the more I have the opportunity to give you better topics and figure out what it is that you'd like to hear as we travel and commute. Today, for a skin cancer appointment, not for work. But that's okay. You were still in the passenger seat with me, learning to live life 1 mile at a time. I'm Michael Blackston. Until episode 43. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.